have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
The revolution will not be televised.
Show me my respect and bow down.
We own ya. We own ya. We only getting started now. Cause we own ya. Everybody think they know me now. Cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie. Cause we own ya.
What's up, everybody? We are back with Pause for Popcorn. Tonight we were going to be reviewing Black Panther. I'm joined with Chris and Justin. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Before we get too much further, I want to make sure we're actually live. Let me just visit our Twitch page.
Fair.
I don't want to record 10 minutes and then find out I got to start over. But yeah, everything looks good. So we'll get rolling. I'll dive right into it. Before we start, I kind of wanted to get everyone's thoughts on the MCU as a whole, because I feel like a lot of times when we hear about opinions about these movies, it helps to color that if we know whether someone hates these movies or not, I guess. I'm pretty sure none of us are in that camp, but I just wanted to feel you guys out and see where you're at, kind of on the, as a whole, or I guess specifically Phase 3. I feel like they've really kind of started figuring out things lately in the last few movies. But Chris, why don't you go first?
All right, sure. MCU overall, I like it. I want to say that Phase 2, I wasn't as hot on it, I guess you could say. Like, I really liked the early stuff. Phase 2, I wasn't as hot on. Phase 3, I feel like they've really come around and they've done a lot of more unique, kind of experimental almost movies this phase, and I'm really digging it so far. I wouldn't call myself a super fan of the MCU, but, I mean, I go see all the movies, so, you know, it's not like you know.
I go see all the DCU movies, and I'm not a fan.
Do you, though? Do you?
I do. I swore after Batman vs Superman, I was like, okay, that's fine. These just aren't for me. That's it. I'm like gonna wait till Justice League's out, and then it rolls around, and like you just need to be part of the conversation. Like I just need to know what people are talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And then if you criticize it, you're like justified because you're like, I've seen this movie. I know what's wrong. Yeah. I'm not a big into the DCU, but you know, MCU movies I really liked. I've really loved Phase 3 so far a lot. Like I've really liked what they did with Spider-Man. I like what they did with Thor. I like Black Panther. Obviously, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah.
How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I've been big into the MCU basically since the day it started. So yeah, I've been very very on board, and I've been extremely pleased, like with Phase 3 in particular. They've really upped a lot of the characterization stuff that I've been really hoping for a while out of these movies, and I've been quite pleased with that.
Yeah, I think like Chris said, they've really found the groove in how to make different styles and different tones, but that all still feel cohesive, if that makes sense. And I like that. We'll talk about Black Panther again, obviously, but Thor was fine as like a strict comedy, but I'm glad they're not going that route with everything. And you know, as for myself, it's kind of weird to me. Like I read a bit of Spider-Man growing up. He was the only superhero that like I gave a shit about. But other than that, I was like never in a comic. So like when these movies started, part of it was like it was like a whole new thing for me. Whereas a lot of people, I think the appeal is seeing these pages and characters they've loved forever come to life on the screen. But for me, it's like I don't know anything. I want to find out more about each of these characters and how they all fit in. And it's died down a little bit. I remember in Phase 1, it was like an event every time a movie came out. And
it was,
leading up to the Avengers, like I haven't felt that same hype, but the movies have gotten consistently better, I think. Like you said, Phase 2 was a little bumpy. and I think that was part of the transition phase where they were trying to figure out, how to start not being shoehorned into having to have everything tie in together in certain ways and allowing them to breathe on their own. But definitely, I like all the movies to a degree, even the ones I'm kind of lukewarm on, like, most people like Iron Man 2. It still has, like, it's not a bad movie. I can't pick out one movie and said, like, because when people talk about bad movies, I think like Catwoman or, like the original Daredevil or like, they're all competently acted, competently shot, scored pretty well, even if it's not memorable. Like they're decent productions, whether or not they're that memorable. But definitely not without their flaws either. The first time I think the origin cliche really got to me was Doctor Strange, and I really like a lot of that movie, but that was the first time I remember thinking like, okay, like
here we go again.
Another 30 or 40 minutes of watching him get his powers. Like at this point, we just want to see them start the movie doing their superhero thing. I feel like, right? Yeah. So, but anyways, let's get into Black Panther. What did you guys think?
I thought it was great.
Okay,
you can go first. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know who was going first. Yeah,
I thought it was great. I didn't go in with a lot of. I try not to go in with knowing a whole lot because, like you said, Jeff, I read some comics growing up, but I wasn't like big into them. So like Black Panther was a completely new character for me. I didn't really have a lot of expectations. So I went in pretty. I watched the trailer, but I didn't read about it or anything, and I was very surprised at how much I liked the movie. Granted, I usually like MCU movies a decent amount, but this was really good. I loved how standalone it was, I guess. Like, it had a really self-contained story. All the characters were really great. The villain was probably my favorite villain in the entire MCU, I'm not going to lie. And I really... some of the MCU movies have characterization issues, like you really only feel for the hero, but in this one I kind of like felt for every character in the movie. I was like, okay, I can get why you're doing the things you do. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I think a great example is like, and when you talk about the other characters, think of Thor or Thor: The Dark World, which is now a meme.
I don't think about that one too much.
But I mean, like, I remember watching Ragnarok when they kill off the Warriors 3 or whatever, and I just felt like nothing. I was like, I know these are his best friends, but I never felt like I knew any of them. Like there was no attachment to it.
It took me a second to realize that they were the same people. I was like, oh, it's those guys. Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't remember.
And they were just brushed aside like an afterthought. But that's what a lot of the Marvel puts all their focus on the heroes, I think a lot of times to the expense of their villains, because that's where their strengths are. But this one, like you said, like all like Shuri and sorry, you'll have to forgive me if I can't remember some of the names. But Danai Gurira's character, Okoye. Oh god, I'm gonna butcher these pronunciations, but like everyone in this movie, I felt like had something to do, had a purpose, and was just really well developed and unique, and served like in a way. I don't think T'Challa would have been like. A lot of the supporting characters were the heroes in this. Basically, where would he be without his sister, or the Dora? Oh my god, help me out.
Doram something. I don't. Yeah.
Basically, his guard, right?
Dora Milaje.
Dora Milaje. Yeah. Thank you. But definitely the supporting cast really is what elevated this, I think, to kind of that upper tier that we always talk about.
Yeah.
How about
Shuri was great. His sister.
Shuri was excellent. I loved her. When she's doing like the whole like Q gadget walkthrough and everything, like, that I thought. Sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit on this, but like I loved how that scene served as simultaneously like a really good introduction to kind of the deeper parts of her character and how she relates to T'Challa and like how he operates as Black Panther, but like also like a really great intro to Wakandan tech and everything too, which was really neat. Plus, it was just a fun scene.
It was really.
I should have mentioned this earlier, so I will say it now for us and for anyone who might be listening to this. This is a spoiler podcast. So you don't need to dance around anything. You can jump to any part of the movie. If you guys haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, get out right now. because I'm not going to apologize for it.
Okay, good, because I didn't know. I was like, I don't know if I should say anything about that character yet.
I think before I might have done it, but you can't talk about things without really being able to dig into everything that happens. I don't know how you have a good discussion like that. So,
and especially with this movie, I feel like there's so much going on, like new. Like this is so new to the MCU. There's not a lot of crossover characters in it. So to talk about it without talking about any of the new characters, I mean, everything we say would be a spoiler, basically. But yeah, I liked Killmonger a lot. Like, I thought he was a fantastic villain. I really, really liked him. I also liked the guy that he was with in the beginning of the movie. He was kind of the psycho guy. I don't remember his name.
Claw.
Yeah, he was fun as well.
But
I just thought the villains were great in this movie.
Claw was interesting. Like, I remember seeing him in Age of Ultron really briefly, and I got kind of like this badass vibe from him, and I still got that in this one. But as it goes on, he's really unhinged.
He is. He's just kind of crazy.
I think Andy Serkis played it really well. He might have gone close to that line of going a little too over the top, but I think he reeled it in when he needed to, and he had some fun with the character, which I love to see because it's kind of a contrast to, Killmonger's his very serious, very believable motivations, and then on the other side, you've kind of got him teamed up with Claw, who's, from my perspective, just kind of a lunatic. Like, he's
a loose cannon.
Exactly. He's not as calculated.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, all the characters were just, I thought, really fantastic.
And this is one of the most recent MCU films I can think of that were I guess to an extent, Thor Ragnarok, when I'm talking about the music, a lot of times the music isn't bad, but when I come out of the movie, I can't really think of any points that it stood out.
Just kind of there.
Yeah, exactly. And in this one, I remember just specific scenes where it was really well used, and interesting use of licensed music too, which is something we don't see very often in the MCU, except I guess from Thor. We had Led Zeppelin twice.
and the stuff that Tony would play, like
he'd play like AC/DC or whatever all the time.
But I remember when they come through the jungle into Wakanda for the first time, like, it's just, I don't know, and the African, like the tribal beats, everything from the aesthetic to the music, just it helps give it that distinctive flavor that, again, I haven't really felt from one of these movies before.
Yeah, it was very different than every other MCU movie I've ever seen, which I liked a lot. Like, even if I didn't know this was part of the MCU in any way, it would have still been like, going in and knowing nothing about it, it would still been a hell of an entertaining movie because, it doesn't have a lot of. I mean, it obviously has a lot to do with the rest of the MCU, but while you're watching it, you're not really thinking about all the ramifications. You're thinking about T'Challa and Wakanda and the story that's there, and I really liked that whole aspect of it. Wakanda was kind of a character in and of itself, in a way, like the way that it works.
And one of the things I loved about this movie is how, like, personal it felt. A lot more so than many of the other, like, recent MCU movies. Like, even though it did, like, the events, did affect all of Wakanda, and there was, like, a little bit of, globe hopping when they go to South Korea and stuff. Like, it really felt like each character had a strong personal stake in the events, and it wasn't, like, the same level of, like, world-ending calamity kind of thing that we've had lately. And I think that was a really great choice for this movie and these characters in particular. And like you were mentioning with, like, how Wakanda was character in itself, like, I have read a bit of Marvel comics, not too many, but, like, Wakanda is a very central thing in there. And to be able to, like, translate it so well into the movie and introduce it to the audience, and as well as, totally illustrating how the characters relate to their homeland and how they feel about it and everything was, it was just a really great, it was a great focus for this film. And I think it will serve, as, the introduction to Wakanda and the characters and everything into the MCU really well. But I did love how it was, probably one of the most standalone of the MCU movies that we've had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on the Wakanda stuff later. There was a couple of things that bugged me about it. Not that it was bad, but before I get to that, I just again like when we're talking about the things we loved about the movie, it was really topical and real. And like when it comes to real world politics, I can't think of any other Marvel or even superhero film. Like a lot of Nolan's movies, Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, like they dealt with some ideas. Like the last one we had kind of some of the. I think that was around like the Occupy Wall Street movement, like the 1%, and Catwoman was kind of giving her little speech. But this one, like at the end, I was like, wow, this is kind of a big fuck you to Trump's America. Like some of the things that they talk about and the way that they treat it when you're talking about, is what responsibility does a nation like this have to help the rest of the world? Even leaving aside some of the racial issues that they get into, the more personal politics, just that kind of broad, that broad responsibility that they touch on was a really good message, and I think like super important right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that part of it was also really exciting, just because like we've had so many stories of like these individual heroes and how they relate to the people in their communities, the people that they protect. The stuff that sort of thing has been central in in the Captain America movies. It was in Spider-Man: Homecoming. It's been in Thor. Like we've had that story a lot. Like I thought it was a really neat turn when they focused on how this nation would work for the betterment of the world, not just the guy in the mask saving everyone. It was a really nice way of kind of expanding the scope of of these MCU origin stories beyond just the one single character.
I want to get deeper into Wakanda and Killmonger, just because I kind of eventually want to branch into some of the things that didn't work for me in the movie. There wasn't a lot of them, but I think it's important to address them. Justin, you mentioned Wakanda, like how good a job they did kind of setting it up and making it feel like this really distinct place in the universe. And I agree to an extent, but I had some, I guess, small issues with how it was presented, and this might just be like I missed something or kind of a personal quabble, but I didn't get a huge sense of like how many people are in Wakanda. The city itself looked huge and massive, and like it would be home to hundreds of thousands of people. But then like at the end, I felt like that was a fight for the country, and it felt like that final battle was a smaller group of people, and I don't know if that was just because it's these very small groups of warriors, or if like the shots of people walking around in the streets, it was also they were pretty tight in. Like it was a shot of T'Challa and Lupita Nyong'o's character.
Nakia, I think.
Nakia, thank you.
Yeah.
The two of them, but again, like just some of those shots felt very close, and I didn't get. I think they just could have done a better job to give some huge panning shots and a better setup. Like what's life in this city like? What are people doing? The interiors of the buildings, the tribal council meeting room was pretty small. You're talking 20, 30 people. I don't feel like I really know how many people are in there, and
we don't really get a sense of how big the country is,
right?
At all. I mean, they have shots. They had shots of like out of villages outside the city, but then you're like, I don't really know how big this is in relation to.
But then half the people in those farms are in the final battle.
Right, that's true.
So, from a style and aesthetic perspective, for sure, I think they nailed it. I just could have used a little bit more development there, and I think that issue goes to some of my other complaints with the movie. Some things I think were a little bit rushed, and they didn't need to be, because a lot of times these movies are padded out, and I could think of like, okay, they didn't need to spend that much time with this. But with this movie, I felt like every single scene and every single shot had a purpose, and I actually wouldn't have minded if it was like 20 minutes longer, especially when it comes to Killmonger, just giving him a little bit more room to breathe. The opening setup and his motivations are really well done, but the latter half of the movie, I feel like that turn, and then him taking the throne and T'Challa coming back, it just happens very quick, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of him kind of being in charge of Wakanda and how that affects the other people around him.
And we would have gotten to explore his character a little more while in doing so. So
exactly, yeah. I don't know. What you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, that stuff's fair. The sense of size of Wakanda and like the like big battle also seeming like just kind of the handful of warriors thing was something that stood out to me too. And I would love to see more Killmonger as well, because I thought he was a really compelling character.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just quickly, I was going to say, like, as much as I liked Claw, I feel like they could have made him have a lesser role in order to give Killmonger kind of more time, because it was like he was the villain. Claw was the villain in the first 30 45 minutes, and then it kind of transitioned over to Killmonger. But by that point, they were like, oh, we only have like an hour and 15 minutes to finish the story, so it did feel like they needed to go a little quickly. And I do agree, I would like to see a little more Killmonger in the film. But I think they did a really good job with the flashbacks. Whenever they bury him in the sand or dirt or whatever, they had the flashback with his dad in Oakland or whatever, and I thought that scene was really, really well done to like give him more purpose as a character.
I loved those scenes. The ancestral plane, I think they called it, and I don't even know if it was much as a flashback. Like for me, it was T'Challa was visiting this place and able to communicate with the past Black Panthers or the Panther gods, like all of them in the tree, and his father. And I found it really interesting. And again, I don't know if it was intentional. This is my interpretation. When Eric goes there, he doesn't get to be in Wakanda. He doesn't get to be in that field with all the previous ones. Like, even though at this point, he's assumed the mantle of Black Panther, he defeated him, he's still sent back to that apartment in Oakland. And his father tells him, "I'm sorry, but you're lost." Yeah. And I thought the exchange between them, acting aside, was just really powerful, and really struck me. Really tragic. That's when I first started to really identify with his character, I think, which was a big reason. And I've spoken about this before, I think, maybe on this podcast, but the best MCU villains for me are the ones with really personal connections to the heroes. We talk about like Loki and Thor, or Michael Keaton's Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, the connection he has to Peter there through Liz. And Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like all of these, just I think having that little extra motivation and those personal connections make everything more interesting and less black and white, I guess, than something like Hela in Thor Ragnarok. Well, I guess she's related to him too. That one I don't think was done quite as well, but I don't want to get too much into Thor here. But I loved what they did with Killmonger, and I agree. I don't know if it was a flaw of the movie that he wasn't on screen as much. Maybe it's just because he was so good and so interesting that I just want more.
That final line that Killmonger has, though, I think might be the best like single line in the MCU. Like that was such like a gut punch of a line. Like that part will stick with me for a long time. Like that was like with him and T'Challa looking out over over Wakanda, and I can't remember verbatim, but what was it? When T'Challa says they could heal him, and he's like, "Why? So you could lock me back up, bury me in the ocean, where my ancestors jumped off the boats because they knew that death was better than bondage," something like that.
Yeah.
Like that was the point that like really solidified this as like one of the top MCU movies for me, because like the movie has a sense of like it knows what it represents to a lot of people. It knows what Wakanda represents. It knows what it represents to kids that are going to be watching it, to Black filmmakers, and it has that knowledge and integrates it so well into the actual narrative, and the characterization and stuff. And that's the one thing that really, really impressed me. Like, it all felt natural, but like the movie never forgot what kind of importance it's going to have. Not like in a within the MCU kind of thing, but within the broader cultural sense. And I loved that about it.
And obviously, all the focus has been on the black cast and the soundtrack, like the music influence and stuff like that. But I think what I really loved, and what even my girlfriend loved, she mentioned when we got out of the theater, was the women in this movie. It's
the women were awesome.
Yeah, they were
there's
awesome.
not a single weak link there. Shuri's just. I think I read someone say she's technically the smartest person in the MCU right now. I don't.
Yeah,
know.
I think she would be.
But yeah, all of them across the board, especially Danai Gurira's scenes. The one in the club where she throws the wig and uses the spear, and I love that take too. That was I was waiting for something like that because Ryan Coogler did some of that stuff in Creed. But there was a really nice kind of single continuous shot from up there down below, and then kind of back up to the second balcony.
The audience went nuts in my in my showing when she pulled off the wig.
Yeah,
that was an awesome scene.
And I love the car chase too. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, the women are just fantastic in that movie. All of them were really, really badass and really awesome. So,
and I loved how much like screen time they had too. Like T'Challa was almost always with at least one of them.
Yeah, they didn't feel like sidekicks. They just felt like a posse of ass kickers. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever feel like Chadwick Boseman was kind of almost not overlooked, but did you feel like maybe the strength of the supporting cast almost overshadowed him at times? Or it could just be the nature of his character. He's a little bit more subdued than someone like Tony Stark.
I don't know if they overshadowed him, but like I did like how, because in some of these movies, it's like almost every frame has the lead in it. Mm-hmm. And like this allowed us to kind of get a sense of the importance of T'Challa outside of two other people, to Wakanda, outside of it. Like they didn't rush through like them finding him after he was beaten by Killmonger in the challenge as fast as a lot of movies would. Normally, like, maybe there'd be a scene or two and then it would flash to like him waking up in the river or whatever. They actually let, the women's story play out for a little bit in the city. And I loved that. Like they really did, they allowed those characters to exist outside of T'Challa, but they also really fleshed him as a character out and, added to the scenes that, he was in and interacting with them. So I thought that was great.
And the other thing I love was the ending of the movie. Again, it just, when I talked before about, we talked about the importance of the, not only what this movie is doing for women and for people of color, but I think the ending was just really touching when he went back to the apartments and basically trying to make amends for what his father did. And then I found it a little funny that an African nation's doing an outreach program in the United States. I just love that they had the boldness to do that. And I thought it worked really well in the movie. And it was a very inspiring message, a very uplifting ending. And I felt like it meant something. A lot of times these movies kind of end. It's like, oh, that was fun.
And then at the end, he had the press conference. And one of his lines he said was, instead of building walls, we're going to build bridges, which was another kind of, which I thought was
because the whole point was they were hiding and they were keeping everybody out for so long. Yeah. And then they realized they could do so much good. Like, I loved that, because there's been like people saying stuff like Killmonger was right and stuff like that. Like they really did take, what he was saying and then, just made it be more, heroic and like worldly pleasant way of doing it. Like it wasn't like it wasn't because sometimes when they have, villains that have a point, they kind of still throw them out anyway because they're the bad guy.
Mhm.
And like it still felt like Killmonger had like an impact and a legacy, and was kind of successful, but just with a different endpoint.
Yeah, he definitely had a big effect on T'Challa's like decision to extend help to, other nations, which is the point of which is how the movie ended, which is great. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. To me, the point of it was that he was basically right. He just needed to like take it down 2 notches.
It was a little too extreme. And, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I remember the scene that really struck me was after they finish the fight, kind of on the train down below when he gets stabbed, and they're both kind of just sitting there. And again, Michael B. Jordan's acting just really helped sell that character, and he had tears coming down his face, and like, oh man, I really empathized with him. Like, I really felt his pain, and it's just that's as much as I like the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming, I didn't get that same emotional impact that I did from this movie.
Yeah, you feel bad when he died because he was like, you kind of relate to him, and he had a really hard life, up to that point, and it was, I don't know, you really relate to that character, and it pains you to see him go, even though he's the villain of the movie. But part of me almost was like, oh, are they going to do something where they redeem him and bring him back later? But well,
I think that's also part of why that final line was so like impactful. It really seemed like they were going to try to find a way to like have him be like some kind of like a sidekick to Black Panther or something like in the long run, but
it would have lost its impact a little bit.
Yeah. I want to talk quickly about something that wasn't in the movie, and that was the last Infinity Stone. There was basically no setup for Infinity War in this one, I think, to the strength of the movie. But I'm just curious, you guys, because I think everyone had kind of had the impression from the trailer that there's a big battle going on in Wakanda, and that it's probably to do with the stone. I guess I'm trying to bridge now the conversation from this movie to how we get into Infinity War. How do you guys think those two are going to link up? Looks like in the trailer we've got Cap and Bucky kind of in Wakanda, and then maybe another team in New York. And we saw the post-credit scene, or post-credit scene from this one. We see Bucky waking up, which I thought was kind of a cool little Easter egg.
Yeah,
that was a nice scene, but like it also was like they kind of did it as if it was a big reveal. It's like, well, we already knew Bucky was in Wakanda. Like,
it was more like a reminder in case you forgot.
There's like 2 people out there who never sat through the where did he go in there? Civil War.
Yeah,
they never sat through those end credits, and then they saw this one, and it blew their mind.
They're like, what? How is Bucky?
I guess that is kind of weird. So they both parts of that story were both post-credit scenes. I did think the press conference should have been in the movie. I thought that was a really important moment for them to kind of come out to the world.
I feel like they almost just separated it because it was such a good moment to end on that they ended and started the credits for. Like, also, it would have been was a good end moment for the UN conference. So I think it was just, we can't decide between which one of these to actually be the final scene, and then put both in.
It worked, definitely. But yeah, as far as Infinity War, I think it's going to start in. I got the feeling it's going to start in Wakanda with Bucky somehow. I don't know how they're going to get to the conflict though. Like, I have no idea how they're going to do that because you're right. They still have an Infinity Stone that we need to figure out what's going on with it. I don't know.
Do you guys think? Let's say they do a sequel for Black Panther. I don't think one's been announced yet, but it's. I should mention it. Actual numbers came in, and it's going to clear $200 million for a 3-day weekend.
They're going to do a sequel then.
Isn't it like over 230 or something for the 4-day?
Yeah, it's about 400,000 shy of the Force Awakens first Sunday, which is just insane. We're getting a sequel. Would you want to see it?
It's not happening.
I would be down for a sequel.
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Would you want to see it kind of like this, where it's isolated to Wakanda, or I feel like the trend with Marvel movies has been with sequels to team them up. We got
Yeah.
Tony and Spider-Man in Homecoming, Thor and Hulk and Ragnarok, Winter Soldier. We had Cap and Black Widow, and then to an extent Sam. So, would you guys rather them keep it focused on Wakanda and keep it focused on this core supporting cast, or would you want to see T'Challa start interacting with maybe one or two other characters and have them expand the scope?
I mean, I think we'll kind of have to see how like Infinity War and stuff
That's a good
play
point.
out because
if they're all dead.
Yeah, there could be quite a few changes cast wise and location wise based off of what goes down in the next couple Avengers movies. But yeah, I mean, I think if there is going to be some kind of like team up or crossover, they might start starting that, like planting the little seeds of like that relationship like throughout Infinity War and Avengers 4 and everything.
I know everybody's sick. No, I was just gonna say I know everybody's sick of Tony Stark, but I need a scene of him and Shuri talking to each other where she basically just laughs at his tech and says, "Oh, this is cute."
That better be in Infinity War. Like, I want that so bad.
Is she in the movie? I know a couple of them are. I don't know everyone who's confirmed for it. I have to assume she is, especially if some of it takes place in Wakanda.
I mean, we only really have. I'm not one of those people that I don't like, pulling apart every frame of the trailers. I try to limit watching trailers, even though I see everything in theaters. Like, it gets hard when they're on the movie screen. But like when that whole like Wakandan, force is getting together with Cap and Bucky and everything, like she would have to be there. Like, I can't see any reason she wouldn't be.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to mention?
I'll just say that if they do a second one, I kind of don't want them to team up because I think the cast that they have in the first one is super good, and I kind of want to see more of that almost. I don't know. Like, it's so good. There's so many good characters they've introduced in this movie that's surprising because a lot of the other MCU movies, you get like the hero and maybe one other person, like with Captain America and Bucky, for example. But in Black Panther, like every single character, I'm like, yep, I want to see more of her, I want to see more of her, I want to see more of him. So, I almost feel like a sequel, if they do a team up, like I'll just get less Denai Guerrero and I'll get less, you know, Shuri or, I don't know. That's my feeling. But and M'Baku, I mean, he was great in that movie. He was a surprise.
He was awesome.
He was a surprise.
I really enjoyed him.
I loved him. He was funny.
Yeah, what was the line he said about being a vegetarian? And then I just loved.
He's like, I'm gonna feed you to my children, and then he like freezes up. He's like, we're vegetarian.
The timing, the jokes in this were, I thought, really well handled. Almost like Civil War or Winter Soldier. I felt like the Russos really nailed the balance between serious and comedy, and I think this one kind of had that same good balance. Obviously, something like Thor Ragnarok by nature can go a little goofier and sillier.
I loved the gag during the car chase when the car gets destroyed. We follow her flipping over it, and then it's like, oh, well, what happened to Nakia? And she's just like holding the steering wheel, just going like on the chair down the road.
Was that car made of vibranium, or was that just a? What was the ad they did? I can't remember.
T'Challa's car was vibranium. I don't know. I think they just grabbed a random car.
Yeah. Okay. Well, unless you guys have anything else, I'll probably go ahead and wrap it up there.
Just the one like criticism I think I had of the movie is I thought like some of the bigger action scenes were a bit weak compared to some of the recent like MCU movies. Like I really liked the like personal one-on-one fights. Like you could kind of see like some of the Creed experience coming through with both Michael B. Jordan and from Coogler's perspective.
Like kind of the duel they had in the end was
Yeah.
But like some of the bigger fights just didn't have quite the same impact as I was hoping they would, which was a bit of a bummer. But I think it was also less important to this movie than it would be for other MCU movies. And also, like, I don't know if it was just where I was seeing it, but the CG seemed weak at times compared to some other recent MCU movies, and it just to the point where it just stood out to me, which I thought was odd.
There were parts that. Yeah, the CG did seem a little weak.
Because there was one part in particular, like in the casino fight, where T'Challa jumps from like the first floor up to the second floor after Claw. He's not in the suit or anything. There's like a really obvious transition to like a CG model of him like teleporting up a floor and then it transitions back.
Like Matrix Neo on the pole.
Yeah,
spinning around.
that was the comparison I was gonna make. It was just odd because like the MCU movies have had great effects work lately. And this didn't have a lower budget or anything.
Yeah, the parts that stuck out to me.
I just didn't know if anybody else noticed that as well. Like I said, I think it's less important to this movie than it would be for other MCU movies. So like, it's a very minor complaint compared to everything they nailed.
I didn't notice it in the casino. I felt like the fights at the waterfall, the green screening, like kind of behind the waterfall, like the backdrops, were a little, I don't know if it was the color grading or something just felt a little bit off between what was behind them and the characters themselves, and even some of the crowd kind of up on the waterfall. It was just a little, again, like not, I don't think to the detriment of the movie, but that part stuck out to me. And some of the animations, like you said, I noticed, I was rewatching Civil War recently, and there's a couple parts where, there's one where Black Panther and Cap are kind of engaged in a chase and they drop down, and it's like, it's a really hard thing to describe in words, but it's the animation, like kind of the impact when they land. There's a very fine line between getting that weight and feel right when someone hits the ground, and it's almost a little too quick and video gamey there, and I felt like that in some parts in this movie. The animation just wasn't quite off. Like the arm movements, the leg movements, the body, just it didn't quite have that physical presence that it should. No. I mean, that's what I noticed.
That's fair. I think that's kind of what I noticed as well.
Honestly, like most of the complaints I'm seeing are about like the final fight with the train and stuff, and I didn't think that was actually as bad as some of the...
that part was fine. I thought like all the suit stuff was good.
The suit stuff was interesting. They changed it a lot from Civil War. Did they actually get rid of the white eyes completely?
Oh, I did. I don't know. I didn't even think about that. But I just liked the way like it would pulse with the kinetic energy like upon the points of impact. Like that kind of led to a cool continuity between the fights before he let it out, because you could kind of see every place he had been hit over the course of the fight. That was a really neat detail.
Yeah, it was cool how they did that.
I thought I was actually surprised. From the trailers, I was like, oh my god, here we go again with the villain who's kind of a carbon copy of the main one. But that really didn't bother me at all in the movie. I thought they did a good job.
No, it worked really well. And like the scene where he gets like the Black Panther powers and then like burns the plants and everything was super cool. Like those scenes were really impactful, and I think it felt a lot more earned than like, oh, turns out this person has the same suit as you and you didn't know it. Like the fact that, he actually had become Black Panther and become king and everything was...
It's like the opposite of Jeff Bridges and Iron Man with they call him Ironmonger or something like that. Like he wanted to be Iron Man, basically. He wanted that power. And I felt like Killmonger said, fuck it. Like I want to get rid of everything. I want to start over, burn it all down. So, the suit was just a means to an end for him, really, I think, rather than something he was trying to attain or aspire to, which helped differentiate it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, I think we've pretty much exhausted it. I just got in from a nice little vacation, so I got to get some stuff ready and back to the grind at work tomorrow.
All right.
Just one thing I wanted to say is like there was a lot of it was really cool to see some of the reactions to this movie as I was on my way out. Like the theater we went to did have a lot of pretty large black audience at it. We were at one of the early showings, and like walking out, there's this one little kid that was really amped. This little girl that was talking about how cool she thought Shuri was. And then even some like older guys like high-fiving each other and like really cheering and stuff. And, like, it was really cool. It's been a while since I've seen just such earnest, like, excited reactions to a movie like that. Just made me smile. And it's like, that's what I think like big blockbuster movies should do for people.
It's an event movie, right? Like, it's not just another release. And
yeah,
I agree.
This one, like, it feels like an event in a way that they haven't for a while.
Probably, yeah, like an event like Star Wars or like Avatar, maybe not with the total box office of those, but yeah, like you said, something that people were going out and dressing up as. Like my coworker showed up in like Wakandan inspired attire, like t-shirt and stuff like that, like the really loud visual palette. And yeah, I'm in a very basically Canadian Texas, like a super white part of Canada, and I think almost every black person here was probably at the theater. There was a good good amount of diversity in the crowd. So yeah, it's just awesome to see people come out and support it and be rewarded. They had a really good story on the news too. There was a family here that adopted a kid from I think it was from Congo or something like that, and they're like, oh, he loves the MCU, but he always asks, Mommy, why don't they look like me? Why do all these people look like you? And then just for people to see, it's one of those things that the people who say it doesn't matter have never experienced it. Because it does matter, right? Especially when you're a kid, a big part of that power fantasy is being able to see yourself in that suit or see yourself be these heroes. And when you can't look in the mirror and feel like you can imagine yourself being that person, that takes a big part of that away. So it's just great to see something like this exist and that it's so successful and turned out so well.
And then I think I mentioned this when we were talking on Twitter earlier, but like at one point in the movie, I realized I'm like, oh, I love all these actors, but I never get to see them together in anything.
Right?
Because usually they're one of the only like people of color in the entire cast. So like that's part of why like this cast was really fun to see. On top of the fact that they all had great characters and nailed the performances and everything. It was just we don't get to see these actors together.
Can I just say,
that much.
I feel bad for Forrest Whitaker because I feel like the last two things I really saw him in like this were Rogue One and this movie, and both of them just kind of kill him halfway through. So it'd be nice if someone could just let him live and like maybe we'll get to see him in another movie.
Let him live to a sequel, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Forrest Whitaker.
Give him that Yondu send-off or something
he's just
like
been
that.
kind of old, tired guy in the past few movies.
That dies like halfway through.
The mentor to kind of inspire the hero. Oh, shit. Okay, well, thanks for coming on, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks
Appreciate you holding back your thoughts, and I know it was like a struggle for me not to just go and talk about this movie everywhere, but really something I wanted to just discuss with people who've seen it, because I don't really feel like just saying, oh, it's a great movie does it justice. So yeah, it was fun having both of you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
And if you haven't seen Black Panther, go see Black Panther.
The checks will clear soon.
Listen to us go through everything.
Yeah.
It's still worth seeing, even if you're spoiled.
Before we go, do you guys want to give yourself a plug for Twitter, or Chris, you got your other podcast that you do. You want to give that a shout out?
I'll just give a shout out to my Twitter. People can find me there. I'm at Chris on the Twitter, so go look me up.
I'm at RoboPlato, like the philosopher, on Twitter. You can follow me there. I talk about games and movies a lot.
And I'm at Banana Factory 87 on Twitter, and you can follow the official show account at Paused4Popcorn. That's the number 4, because Twitter handles are all taken up, and I don't want to pay $200 for the rights to one. As for the
how much would Jeff cost?
Just Jeff? I actually haven't looked to see who has the Jeff account. I will look into that and see what the cost is to acquire it. maybe once the SDGC gets sponsored, that'll be our first endeavors to go to buy up some of those domains. But as for the show, you guys can catch us monthly-ish. We used to be a weekly podcast, and I discovered that I just don't have the time for that. So I think what we're going to do is we'll show up, every few weeks, maybe once a month. We do things like film reviews like we did for Black Panther. We might do some retrospectives where we go back and watch old movies. And we might do some topical shows where we just talk about maybe one or two current events or something like that if something's really big in the news that we feel like discussing. So you can go and follow the show account I mentioned. You can follow at official SDGC on Twitter. That's our Super Deformed GamesCast account, which is what hosts all of our content here on Twitch, as well as on YouTube. We'll be posting our archive videos as well. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this, and thanks again, Chris and Justin, for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out.
Wakanda Forever!
The revolution will not be televised.
Let's have some fun.
The revolution will be live.